How's that? Better? Okay. Before we go to agenda review, it's great to be here in Effingham and back on our cycle of visiting our schools during the school year. I've really missed that over the last year and a half, not being able to go to elementary school, the middle school, and all to see the activities of the students. So it's great to have our first meeting here. We'll hopefully get back into Effingham to see some of the students later on in the school year. On that note, agenda review, anything to add? Okay. Moving forward then, the first item of business is to approve the minutes of the Building and Maintenance Committee meeting held on June 7th. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any errors or corrections, omissions on that? Okay, it's 2 out of 3 members are here, so all those in favor, signal by saying aye. And there's no one else here, so that passes. Second is the adoption of the school board minutes for the June 7th meeting. Okay, move to accept.
One little correction.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a humorous typo on page 2, at the bottom where it says New Hampshire Leaning Initiative. You may want to add an R.
Yes. New Hampshire Learning Initiative. Okay, excellent. Okay, any other errors or corrections on that? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, signal by saying aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Chair votes aye as well. Thank you. Okay, manifest. Do we have? Okay, we're going to skip the approval of the manifest tonight. We'll approve those manifests and the new manifest at our next meeting. So we'll move on to public input. 15 minutes for public input. The microphone is right here if you would go up. And please limit your remarks if you can, so everyone who wants to speak has an option to speak. So we're going to limit to 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. Yes. Name and town, please.
Good evening. Scott Lounsbury from Wolfboro. I'm rising in support, as you may surmise, of masking, mainly because you have no idea where I've been. So at any rate, 17 months ago, we used the phrase an abundance of caution a lot. We got sick of it, but I found it appropriate at the time. Indeed, 2 masks are better than 1, 2 masks being your mask and my mask, especially among the unvaccinated, which the majority of our students will be, being under the age of 12. In the South, how many are currently losing their only caregivers? You'll hear a lot about rights, but we don't hear an awful lot about responsibilities. Indeed, the Constitution is full of our rights and not so much on the responsibilities. Tom Clancy, the author, had a character, Jack Ryan, and in one of his stories, President Jack Ryan talked about the fact that the Constitution is not a suicide pact. And in that fictional account, they lost 20,000 fictional Americans, and I don't know if we have passed 750,000 or not. Please consider responsibilities as you hear all about the rights tonight. I do have one other set of questions, if I may, Jack, but that's up to you. I'm asking about Vista, and I have heard on social media, and I'd like it confirmed, that Vista has been canceled. Is that the case?
There has been a reorganization at the middle school.
Okay. Is that a permanent thing, or will there be a reconsideration at some point? I'd like to speak to that at some point if that is the case. Sure.
It was based on numbers, Scott,
Yeah.
and also trying to reassign so we could do a little bit more of a focus on math and literacy, and at the same time incorporate many of the activities that Vista is able to do out in nature on some of the other teams, because we didn't really want to give up the good pieces of Vista that can benefit all the teams, so there will be more of an outdoor component to all teams.
Okay. And the board will be open to reconsideration of reforming a Vista at some point in the future, perhaps?
I would think so.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Mark Dentremont. I'm from New Durham. I'm here this evening. Well, let me also let you know I'm the secretary for the New Durham Park and Recreation Commission for the town of New Durham. I'm here this evening because we have some concerns over the decisions to not let us use the school, the facilities in the school. This is very detrimental to our programming, very detrimental to the very kids that attend that school, along with some other smaller towns. Mainly, you know, the basketball program we won't be able to do it if we can't have the school. Now, this basketball program is excellent. I mean, I know one of my sons plays in it. The coaches that we have are just so dedicated. You know, the parents have their heart and soul into these kids like you wouldn't believe. I've never seen it before. These same parents in 2019 also built these kids a playground in New Durham. Volunteer work. I don't know if you guys know about it, but we, you know, had to go through some loops, but we made it happen. It was all due to these parents and their dedication. These same parents are now facing, you know, a problem where, you know, we are not going to allow them to use the school. And again, like I emphasized, the very school that these children go to every day, you know, when the time comes. You know, we're using this building this evening. You know, I respect the use of masks. It makes 100%. I get it. You know, but hopefully things are changing a bit in different directions. I know the kids aren't vaccinated. We did football last year. I was involved in the Rochester Youth Program last year. Very minor incidences with COVID. And these kids were all over each other. You know, it's football. There's other examples I could bring up, but I just want to make sure you understand, and if you've had kids and you understand their enjoyment in these sports and to use the school, if you take away a lot of those things, it's very detrimental to their health. More so than worrying about them getting sick and having all kinds of problems. I think if the adults can be responsible enough, and they have shown that, you know, they've been responsible enough to show what they can do, the coaches wear their masks, you know, do everything they're supposed to do, the kids enjoy themselves, you know, we can't take away the very building that they go to every day for school for them not to play basketball. And also, not just basketball, we have a senior dinner there in New Durham. Some might know of it, and it's wonderful. The seniors love it. We have a lot of seniors in New Durham. We have a big celebration for them, and we use that school facility. So that will be taken away, along with the Christmas craft fair, along with the Easter celebrations. So, you know, I just hope you think hard on decisions of letting us use these facilities and think of the kids. You know, don't just think of, we have to, I understand the safety factor has to be there, but there's got to be a line drawn where, you know, the decision has to be made in the benefit of these kids. You know, and we can't just shelter in place.
Well, thank you for your comment, and that is one of our agenda items tonight,
Right.
use of the facilities, and we will be discussing that later on in the meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And again, as a member of the commission, I've heard a lot of responses from community members that pay the taxes, you know, so we can do all this stuff, you know, let alone there's going to be another $700,000 worth of taxes. I mean, come on. We got to let us use the school.
We get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak tonight?
Hi, I'm Diane Sebastian from Mirror Lake. I have no children in the school systems. I am a grandmother of 8. I just had 6 children up with me. These children, grandchildren are from Connecticut. They missed hardly any school last year, and they had very few incidences of COVID. They're not affected, the majority of children, by COVID. They're not affected. I'm not saying there aren't some. We have lost no children to death in New Hampshire, thank God. We have, the few that have been hospitalized had very severe autoimmune, you know, other types of issues. My point is, this is a parent's decision, I believe. And if the teacher doesn't feel comfortable with their vaccine and their mask, I don't know what to say. I have a 16-year-old granddaughter who, if she could tuck her mask into her eyelids because the people have scared the hell out of her, that she's going to kill somebody. I worked in psych for 20 years. This is going to have long, long-lasting effects on these children, I can assure you. So please, when you're thinking, let it be a parent's choice, a kid's choice, and the adults do what they have to do to keep themselves safe. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
My name is Rhonda Martin, and I'm a Wolfboro resident taxpayer. My children are grown. I do not have any children. I do have grandchildren in this school district. I've been doing a lot of reading, researching, CDC, Brown University, WHO, National Institute of Science, a number of things. May I also say that I'm a retired nurse of 35 years. What I have read from the CDC, WHO, and others here, I mean, I've highlighted many things. I'm not going to go into that. I'm hoping that you people have done your homework. Children are at very, very, very low risk of contracting COVID. No, they are not going to kill the teachers with COVID. Masks, from all these studies, have shown that masks are not, the efficacy of the masks do not stop someone from getting COVID. They don't work. What they do is harmful, proven. And I'll give you these, papers that I have done research on and read myself. They do more harm than they do good. I'm asking that you seriously do your homework, consider, and if you say, well, it's a CDC recommendation, I have proof right here from the CDC's studies saying that the masks do not stop COVID. They do more harm than they do good. I've highlighted it. I can show you. I'm asking that you just at least make this a personal choice. And since our children are young, they have parents. Let the parents choose. If they want to send their child to school with a mask, so be it. The freedom of choice. Let the parents be parents. And let them choose. Make this a personal choice. If the teachers want to wear masks, let the teachers wear masks. We are becoming too draconian, tyrannical. I'm sure you've seen things on the news about other school boards, other parents, mothers that are irate. Do not take the parenting responsibility away from the parents. They know what they're doing. Let it be a personal choice. And I just pray that you people will look to your conscience, do your homework, and follow through with what is really the correct thing to do. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to share.
Name and town, please.
Sorry, Isaac Farley, Effingham, New Hampshire. I have 3 in the school system. So I'll keep it real short. There's a Dr. Weiss. He was well known for many articles, published articles, including one on the, sorry, I'm trying to pull up my notes here. I had it and I lost it. Face mask and ultraviolet light as control measures. And basically the study revealed that, and I as well did a lot of the research, and a lot of studies just really aligned with what the previous people were talking about the effectiveness of masks said, and this kind of echoed that really there's not much effectiveness to the mask. Even if they're wearing an N95 mask, there's only a chance it's going to stop some of the COVID particles. And even then, it has to be well-fitting, which is impossible for our children. And as previously stated, we know the Delta variant is much more susceptible in children, but the likelihood of COVID is still low. And even with COVID, our bodies are meant to take on this, just like we do a cold, right? Cold is a COVID variant, the common cold. And our bodies build up an immunity to this and fight this, and that's what our children need. And the health impacts, like the mental health impacts that was mentioned, that's doing far more harm than what we're doing to our children by masking them, telling them to stay 6 feet apart, which, by the way, the same doctor, they did studies, and 36 feet apart does nothing. They say you need to wear at least an N95, if not an N100 mask, and you need to be like 36 meters apart. So that's not going to happen. It's not, I think we just really need to, if we want to say we're going to follow the science, let's follow the real science and not people in a room that are politically motivated or monetarily motivated to say something or in fear to say something. So that's it. Thank you.
We really need to move on. We've got a long agenda tonight. We're going to have public input at the end of the meeting as well. Okay, I think we should move on. Patty?
Hi, welcome. I'm Patty Morrissey, principal of Effingham Elementary School, and it's super exciting to have the board back visiting schools with us first. We like being first. Another thing that Effingham School was first at was for our solar field. So I've invited Ted and Jack from Barrington Power tonight to speak to you to give us an update about our solar field. My Google Photos reminded me that about a year ago this week, we were still in installation phase of our solar field, and we are well into production at this point. So Ted, Jack.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jack Bam from Barrington Power. Did most of you guys pick up this little spreadsheet dealie here? So this pretty much tells the whole story. As Patty mentioned, about a year ago we were still building. We turned the thing on sometime in November, and you can see that November was a partial month. It only ran for a couple of weeks. And I don't know if you guys remember what the weather was in November, but it was not terribly sunny, nor was the rest of the winter. But if you look down the right-hand column, it says actual. When we get into March, suddenly we start overproducing what the projection is. The thing on the left is a projection, and it's an estimate for an entire year and how much we expect to produce in a given month. And what we're seeing is that when we have a good sunny month, we're actually easily overproducing what we projected, which is exactly what should happen. This is in kilowatt hours. And the other thing is that since November, that thing's been sitting out there in that field just doing its job without any of us doing anything. We haven't touched it. We look at it online. We see that it's working. Nothing has failed. It just sits there and does its job. So we think given a year or two of production when the weather sort of evens out across the year, you'll be seeing more than we estimated. And actually, we're pretty close. We're at 92% for the year so far. So another month or two of good weather, and we'll actually be ahead of projections for the year. But this is a good example of how these things work. You have a couple of bad months, you underproduce. But then you get a couple of really good months and you overproduce. So on the average, we expect to more than exceed our targets. Now, because this thing has done exactly what we thought it was going to do, we actually have some suggestions that you might consider for the future, and Ted's going to explain those to you.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to mention before I talk about the suggestions is that one of the benefits of a solar field like this at a school is the educational benefit. And so early on, right after installing this, I met with Patty and some other of the educators here online on Zoom, and we talked about how you can use the data that comes out of the system to teach math and science and pretty much any subject. So it's not just that we've got clean energy that's saving the school district money. The educators are able to incorporate that into the curriculum and help kids learn about science and math as well as renewable energy. So our suggestion is, since this appears to be working just fine and isn't in anyone's hair, it's not in anyone's way, it's not making any noise, it's just producing power and doing its job, we would recommend that the school district consider doing solar on the roofs of the schools, the Kingwood schools, because the Wolfboro Electric recently, since we started, approved the ability to do systems up to 100 kilowatts. So we've evaluated 4 of the roofs at the schools, and you can do 4 100 kW systems at the schools and plenty of room on the roof. So another way to save money and incorporate renewable energy into the science.
Thank you very much. If anyone have any questions right now? Yes.
The sun melts the snow off. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. The question is, do the panels melt the snow off so that they then generates energy after snowfall? So the good news is the panels are black, and even if there's a foot of snow sticking on the panels, it will heat up the panels and melts the snow, and the snow slides off. So we've tilted them at 35 degrees, and we've also put them up at the bottom edges about this high. And so naturally, the 35-degree tilt will self-shed the snow. So the idea is that nobody has to touch them. The snow sheds itself. We have one huge storm at the beginning of the year that we had to remove snow, but that was an anomaly, as you all know, what, 4 feet of snow or something? So otherwise, a normal snowstorm will just take care of itself.
Yes, go ahead.
No, that was another company.
There's actually a display outside that door.
There is? Yes.
Yep. Yep.
So the question is, can you do a display that shows at the school what all the different, the weather and the solar and how much it's generating? And yes, Patty has made sure that there is one right outside. You can look at it as you leave the door.
If anyone hasn't seen the solar array, it's right outside that door. If you want to take a couple of minutes before we continue the meeting, you can go right out. If not, we'll move on with the meeting. But yes, another question?
That's 100 kilowatts AC, and it's 144 kilowatts DC. Well, so this is a little different than just buying a system. We have a contract with the town essentially to sell them power for 25 years at a discounted rate, or the school district. Sorry. So what happens is at the end of 6 years, the school district could actually buy the system at a discounted rate, or they could just continue to buy power at a discounted rate. Either way, the town saves money. I mean, in essence, the town didn't make an investment. They didn't spend any money to do this.
We do the maintenance, and we just sell all the energy that's produced, we sell to the school. And so the school put up $0 and has essentially zero risk, because if it doesn't produce, the school is not paying for the kilowatt hours.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, where are those panels produced? What country makes those panels?
The question is, where is the solar panels produced? And I liken it to the auto industry, where there's Chinese and Korean manufacturers that have U.S. solar panel manufacturing plants. So these particular ones, I'm not sure. There's panels are made in China, they're made in Vietnam, they're made in the U.S. But it's very much like the auto industry, where other companies in other countries bring the manufacturing to the U.S. and they get manufactured here.
Yeah,
or in other countries.
For instance, this particular brand, they do have a manufacturing facility in Georgia, but they don't actually make cells. Most of the cells are made in China, and then they're assembled in various places. But I think these were actually made in Georgia.
So do you have any idea how much pollution is made when those panels are made over in China, when they have no pollution control over there and they just do these things out by the billions? Do you have any idea what kind of pollution that does on the planet?
Well, no, I think it's safe to assume that China's manufacturing is not clean, but I also think we need to consider that whatever materials were used to make those things, they're now captive for the next 40 years, and that's a lot cleaner than burning a gallon of fuel every hour, right? I mean, we've used some chemistry, and they've probably not disposed of it very well in China, but from now on, the school's getting energy that's 100% clean for the next 25 years. So.
What's the lifespan of those panels?
Well, so the average warranty on a solar panel is 80% production remaining at the end of 25 years.
And the lifespan is expected to be 40 years.
And then after they're done with disposal, how do you dispose of those panels?
Well, so there are already companies recycling solar panels for the materials. So 25 years from now, it'll be a foregone conclusion that all of those materials will be recycled.
So it's not like one of the windmills, they have huge dump sites of the blades when they're no good, and they got no way to get rid of them?
Actually, two companies just announced they're recycling blades. So, I think all of these new technologies, they need to develop strategies for recycling, but I think that's all online.
Okay.
That's happening.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
I can answer that. So this is kind of cool. This produces all the energy for this school and then has extra energy left over that gets credited to the, what's the other school? Ossipee Elementary School. So both schools are essentially getting the energy. This one uses the energy actually as it's being produced, but then there's more produced than this uses, so there's credits built up, and those credits get applied to the electricity bill of Ossipee. And that's how the school board set it up.
Okay, anything else? Excellent. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate that.
I just want to mention also that our HVAC system was going much more frequently this year. And so given that, I think the fact that we've been able to accomplish that with solar is remarkable. So it's a successful project. So thank you. Thanks for being here. The next item on the agenda is school board meeting schedule. So let's take a look at the schedule. It is great to be back in an elementary school, and I hope that we'll be able to do this all across the district this year. I don't see why we won't be able to, but we need to make an adjustment to one of the earlier parts of our schedule. So let's just take a look if you don't mind. Our October 4th board meeting, we had switched Brookfield with Effingham, and I think we need to, given the size of Brookfield, and I think we need to move it down to April 4th and then put Crescent Lake School up to October 4th. Does that work for everybody? Okay. Is there anything else in this schedule that looks like it might be need to shift or be a problem? So Brookfield would be April 4th, and then Crescent Lake would be October 4th? Okay, great. It was just so nice coming here today, and just with the nice ride and walking up the pathway, and next time we'll see kids, which will be even better. So, all right, so.
We need a motion to approve the school board meeting schedule Sorry. So a motion to approve the school board schedule as approved. Moved by Stephanie, second by Wendy. Any other comments or concerns? Okay, all those in favor, Krista? Yes. Wendy? Yes. Stephanie? Dr. Jim? Yes. Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Dana? And chair votes aye as well. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the Governor Wentworth Regional School District Stay Open Plan. And just by virtue of the name, you know our goal is to stay open. We really don't want to be back where we were last year, not having school full-time. And the first thing you'll notice about this plan, it is very similar to the plan that we had last year. However, you'll notice that the remote section has been eliminated because we plan to be in school all year, and hopefully the protections in this plan will help us do that. We started on the plan early in August, hoping that we would be able to relax an awful lot that was in it. So the safety committee has met, as well as the COVID advisory task force. As we got closer to the middle of August, the landscape changed quite a bit in our communities, and we started to get updates from DHHS, in other words, the Department of Health and Human Services, and they said that they would be coming forward with a plan. So we took quite a bit out of this plan that we thought we could relax, and then ended up putting quite a bit more back in it because of DHHS recommendations. But before we start, I should probably let you know what the data was a couple of weeks ago on vaccinations, and then just let you know a little bit about total number of cases and where we are in the last 2 weeks in our communities. That might be helpful. So and again, the vaccination rate could have changed since this was done, because it has been a couple of weeks, but Brookfield was a little over 50%. Effingham was a little over 38%. New Durham was a little bit over 43%. Ossipee, 44%. Tuftonboro, 50%. Wolfboro, almost 72%, 71.97, and then Middleton, which isn't part of this school district but does send students here, was about 34%. So active cases as of August 2nd looked very good. We had none in Brookfield, none in Effingham. We had 1 to 4 in New Durham, Ossipee, Tuftonboro, Wolfboro, and Middleton. And then on August 9th, we started to see the cases climb, and there were a total of 12. And that's now that we're at August 16th, it's doubled to 27. So, and these are our weekly numbers that are provided by WMUR. So that just gives you sort of the landscape in terms of what's increasing. Okay. So going on to the first page, well, actually page 4 of 21, the health and safety talks about symptoms checklist for staff and students, and there's a resource for families here, and none of that has changed. The thing that has changed on this page is that we're no longer requiring a screening. We've learned some lessons from last year as far as what was effective and what was ineffective, and our morning screenings really were not effective for us, so the screenings are not included here. The next thing that you'll see is that when nurses are performing a screening of someone who they find is symptomatic, that eye protection has been added, and that was upon recommendation of one of our physicians that sits on the task force. It's not realistic for a nurse to do a screening from 6 feet, so we took out the 6 feet recommendation for the nurse. And those are really the major changes on that page. The next thing that has changed, and this isn't anything that the school district changes, this is the definition of close contact. And the definition of close contact is really up to the Department of Health and Human Services. So I'm not necessarily on a page because that's kind of throughout the close contact definition. But exposure to a positive person, it's now 6 feet unmasked for 10 minutes or more, and 3 feet masked for 10 minutes or more. Okay, so that's considered close contact. So you want to think about that as we talk about what that means. Yes, 10 minutes or more. Yeah. Okay. So again, all of this, in order for us to perform the function that we need to perform and keep kids safe, we need to be working with the Department of Health and Human Services. And so these are recommendations that come directly from the Department of Health and Human Services. Fully vaccinated people who come into close contact, and you've now heard what the definition of that is, with someone with COVID-19 should be tested 3 to 5 days following the date of their exposure and wear a mask in public indoor settings for 14 days or until they receive a negative test result. They should isolate if they test positive, and most fully vaccinated people with no COVID-like symptoms do not need to quarantine or be restricted from work following an exposure from someone with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 if they follow the testing and masking recommendations. Okay. Some of the phone numbers in this section have been changed because the DHHS phone numbers have been changed. School nurses are required to call DHHS and report cases. Okay. So still on page 5, unless a staff member or student has been fully vaccinated, they should quarantine if in close contact with a person who is COVID positive. And then we've talked about what close contact means. It's defined as less than 3 feet masked and less than 6 feet unmasked of someone for a cumulative total of 10 minutes or more, and that's over a 24-hour period. I don't think that was mentioned in the last passage. People who are fully vaccinated do not need to quarantine after contact with someone who has had COVID-19 unless they have symptoms. However, fully vaccinated people should get tested 3 to 5 days after their exposure, even if they don't have symptoms, and wear a mask indoors in public for 14 days following the exposure or until their test result is negative. Okay, and now the next page is under what you do if you quarantine. And again, all these links were checked to make sure that the links are updated, and this should be a good resource for families and for school staff. Okay, so on the next page, you see this has not changed, other than if you look at stay at home. Last year, there was a change made to the availability of testing so that students and staff could get back to school more quickly. And so we have added that you need to stay at home at least 10 days since your symptoms first appeared if you're symptomatic, or at least 24 hours with no fever without fever-reducing medication, and until your symptoms have improved, or 7 days after receiving a negative test. Then you no longer need to quarantine. But the test has to occur on days 3 to 5 or later, so it doesn't really buy you all that much time, but it is an option if people want to do it that way. All right. The next section is pretty much the same as it was. And again, this goes into symptomatic persons choosing to test, or if you choose not to test. It's important that all cases get reported to the school nurse, and that the school nurse makes sure that the things that need to happen have happened before the student returns to school. An asymptomatic person with known exposure or risk travel, and risk travel is considered international or cruise ship, and most cruise ships would be international. Okay, and I think, again, we've already gone over what happens if we have a known exposure, so I'm not going to repeat that. It's pretty much the same thing. Behaviors that reduce the spread, that's the same. Sanitizer station. I'm sorry, my mouth is dry, so I'm having trouble talking here. Washing hands with soap and water, that's all the same. And the source of how to do that properly, there's a link for hand washing. It's a video made by one of our teachers. It's a great video. Okay. Okay, here we go on page 9. Mask wearing expectations. The mask wearing expectations have changed. The recent studies are the same, and there's a link to those studies right in the document. The changes in the mask expectations, one of the things that we've learned this year, it's certainly been a learning year for everybody, is that the risk of COVID transmission outside is very, very low. And CDC and DHHS do not recommend mask wearing outside. That's no longer one of the things that they're very strong about in their guidelines. And so there is no recommendation that our students or staff wear masks when they're outside. We were hoping that we could further reduce the need for wearing of masks, but what we're getting from recommendations are that if we're in low risk or moderate risk, that masks be optional, and you can see that in the DHHS recommendations. If we are in substantial or high-risk categories, that mask wearing be required. So there's some play in there. If we're low or if we're moderate, that's great. If we're substantial or high, obviously there's a greater risk, and so mask wearing would be required. Okay. And then what constitutes a mask is still the same. I have heard from Scott, from several sources, physicians actually, that do believe that double masking is a good way to go. That's not anything that we're recommending, but more people are talking about that. So. Plexiglass is no longer recommended by the CDC as a prevention strategy, so we do have dividers available for the desks, but they're not really required, and I don't think they really do a whole lot to help. So I don't think we'll be seeing as many of those on the desks. However, as you see in many of the stores that you walk into in various shopping areas, there will be plexiglass in front of the reception areas. Okay. Other changes. Outdoor activities, those are very, very similar. Not a lot of differences there. Lockers, same thing. Playgrounds and fields, increased time outside whenever possible. But again, when students are outside, there won't be masks required. For sports, no masks will be required outdoors. And again, these are recommendations, but at this point, no masks will be required outdoors for spectators or athletes. Masks will be required for indoor sports for participating athletes. And 3-foot social distancing will be in effect whenever possible, and COVID screening will be in place for practices and athletic events. So again, outside, no masks, indoors, masks. Field trips and off-site activities, that's pretty much the same as it was at the end of the school year, where permission would be given on a case-by-case basis, and we're hoping to be able to do a lot more field trips. There may be, in lieu of some field trips, there may be some virtual trips, but we'll certainly do as many as we possibly can. One of the things that we also learned this year is that many parents did like having remote meetings because it made it easier for them to Zoom in and talk with teachers, and they didn't have to miss as much work as they might if they had to travel to a meeting. So for those parents that would prefer to have Zoom meetings and not have to take time away from work, we'll certainly continue those. I think that was a great benefit for some families. Visitors to the schools, the same thing. They'll be required to make an appointment. Meetings will be held virtually when appropriate. For vendors that are bringing things into the school, they'll be required to do the checklist. Professional development resources will be provided for new staff in the areas of infectious disease, transmission, COVID-19 symptoms. That is all very similar to what it was previously. Okay, communication plan. Again, the same communication plan pretty much. The vehicles for communication include school messenger, the district and school websites, and email. Local television, as we have going on right now, and video messages. So I will continue to communicate with families as I have whenever there's a case of COVID, and I will also add to that what status we're in, whether we're at least once a week, whether we're in low, moderate, substantial, or high. Food service, we were able to relax that a little bit. For a while during COVID, we had our food service staff bring in prepackaged food, and all the kids were in well, not all, but the majority of kids were in classrooms at the elementary school to have their lunch. That will no longer be required. I think it's pretty safe for our kids to be in the cafeteria. We'll certainly try to distance as much as possible. We'll try to keep the 3 feet to 6 feet distance, but I don't think there's any reason to have prepackaged foods in the classroom. We can get back to more of our normal routine. Again, the things you learn when you're going through something for the first time. All right. Students are certainly welcome to bring their own meals. That's whenever, but I think students do that anyway. That's a choice families make. And again, we want to reduce the number of students in the cafeteria and the gym as much as possible. That hasn't changed. Cohort groups will be scheduled for the cafeteria whenever possible. That hasn't changed. Water stations will be available at the schools. We've turned the fountains off, but there'll be water stations in every school. Some water stations might be bottled water. Other water stations might be containers where they would just fill their water bottles with the water from the water station. Let's see. Cleaning. The other thing that we have learned is that COVID is really not thought to be transmissible through surfaces any longer, so we can go back to our routine cleaning. Our schools are, kudos to our maintenance staff. They do a wonderful job with all of our schools keeping them clean, and they were super, super conscientious through all of this, putting in lots of extra time and care. I think we can now just do more of our routine cleaning, which does involve sanitization anyway on a daily basis. Our heating, ventilation, and cooling, we're going to continue because we know the virus is aerosolized, so we're going to continue to run the HVAC system as has been recommended and has been running through this past year. Let's see. The rest, I think, is, again, very, very similar to what we've had in the past. And let me see if I have missed anything. All right. Well, I don't think so. I think I've covered pretty much everything. So that is what our groups recommended.
Discussion?
We got 6 cases, so we're going to mask the whole school for it. Has anybody died lately from COVID in the state? I mean, I don't think that you gave us the report how many deaths. Because it sounds like you just enslaved the whole community to COVID-19, and turned the whole thing into a slave camp for COVID-19, and we didn't hear how many people died.
I hope nobody dies. I hope.
What's the purpose of the mask if it's not that dangerous anymore? We've reached herd immunity. I mean, everything that Kathy just talked about was about COVID-19, nothing about the education of the children.
The reason we're here is to keep the kids in the classroom. I was shocked to look at the statistics that so many people are not vaccinated. Well, that's your opinion, and that's. Look, I'm not going to. This is not public input, okay? We're discussing this particular program. Right now, we're in the substantial area. Carroll County, all the counties in New Hampshire are in a substantial mode right now, regardless if you agree with that or not. That's the statistics that we're looking at from New Hampshire DHHS. That's where we have to make our decisions. And our goal is to keep the kids in the classroom and keep everybody safe. And we're going to make the decisions that we need to make to keep our children safe. So we're going to have discussion on the board here about this particular program, where we are. And again, it is an individual choice if you want the vaccine or not. Obviously, the statistics have shown that the more people that have gotten vaccines, the rates are a lot lower. If you look in the southern states where the vaccine rates are even a lot lower than ours, the COVID vaccine and this new Delta variant is going right through the roof. So there's a choice. You can make that. Yeah, we're gonna, okay. We'll talk about it at the end. Can I step in? Yep.
Hi, I had a couple of questions. So on page 7, where unvaccinated students and staff, point C, where it says persons in quarantine may test at day 3 to 5. However, a negative test will not allow the person to test out of quarantine early. I'm wondering why we would suggest getting a test if it doesn't make a difference to the length of time in quarantine. Okay. Okay, so that's awesome. Okay, thank you. That's one question.
It's not that even that we would recommend it, it's just that someone wants to test that
Okay. Yeah, if a student wants to come back and they get a negative test after 3 to 5 days, that makes sense. Okay. This is a small thing, but I think it affects the educational benefit. On page 11, it says on the top, with classroom distancing and cleaning, individuals in the classroom will be 3 feet apart whenever possible, and it says desks will be turned facing the same direction rather than facing each other whenever possible. I think, you know, if we're going to follow the mask guidance, I think that the direction of the desks is not maybe need to be affected as much, that because there is an educational benefit to students making eye contact with one another, to be able to engage in discourse. It's much easier, just as we are right now, facing each other than if we're recommending that desks are facing the same direction. And I ask the board to consider if maybe we could revise, just strike that one sentence. And then the last piece, or there's 2 more pieces very quickly. On page 16 about ventilation, what has been shown, because it is an aerosolized virus, that having increased air ventilation, such as we have right now, is the best way to help dilute it. And in the absence of ventilation, air purification, and I'm wondering if we have any awareness of, you know, do all the classrooms in the district have either the ability to have adequate air ventilation, and if not, purification, and if there is not purifiers at this point, if that might be a way that we could use some of the monies from.
We talked about doing purifiers or something like or spraying or something to that effect. Yeah. Yeah.
So we did have an air quality study done at the very beginning of all of this, because at that time it was suspected that the virus was aerosolized, and we have learned since that it definitely is. So the air quality studies really indicated that our air quality is very, very good. And what we have been doing is running our HVA system 2 hours after and 2 hours before anyone is in the building, just to make sure that we do have good quality air and that we're minimizing the risk.
Hey, Krista?
Last year, at one point, we went and switched how we used the numbers. So for the longest time, we were looking at what the county numbers were, what was in Carroll County. And then we decided that maybe we should look at the numbers from the towns that send to us, or that we go, that are already here. So my question is, have we thought about that in regard to how we're going to look at it when we're looking at low, medium, substantial, high? Please do tell us.
Well, yes, we certainly have thought about that. Right now, the metric is provided by DHHS and CDC, and so we know by virtue of their mathematical model when we're in low, moderate, substantial, or high. If we do our own activity by town, there's really no statistical model to help us decide where those points are. So we'd be sort of, we modeled, last year what we did was we modeled on the, larger numbers to give us some kind of guidance, but it was, again, it was just some kind of guidance looking at it at the local level. So. I'm recommending that we look at, it's not just me, it's the groups that I've worked with, would be that we go with the county data, and that we don't look at all the counties in the state. We just look at the 2 counties that we're in, and that would be Stratford and Carroll County.
So my only concern about that is that New Durham is in Stratford, which also contains UNH, which skews the data significantly.
Mm-hmm. I think there's some kind of question, Stephanie, as far as where those numbers are reported and whether they're reported to their home state or not, and I don't know the answer to that.
So I'm at UNH, and they are reported to the state. Okay. So all of UNH's data is incorporated into Stratford County's data. Mm-hmm. So, and UNH has its own testing lab, and those numbers are very accurate. Carroll County as a whole, because the majority of the district is in Carroll County, makes sense to me, but if we are also looking at New Durham, which is part of the district, and we're using Stratford County numbers, it really is a misrepresentation of what we are experiencing in the district.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you know what the numbers are now at UNH? And whether are they requiring vaccinations? That would be another.
So the state has made it so that you cannot require vaccinations. However, they are not in session yet, and so they are following the same state guidelines that we are. But they also have a very rigorous testing program for students that it's happening on a twice-weekly basis. If you're unvaccinated and if you show proof of vaccination, you are still tested once a week. So they are very, very rigorous in order to keep school in session, and they have active quarantine. They have very similar policies to us, but they're dealing with 10,000 people, so it's very different.
Any other comments, Dr. Jim, anything?
I had one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry for being so full of talk tonight. The plexiglass barriers, I was reading on DHHS this morning that they actually do not recommend plexiglass barriers because it inhibits the airflow. And in addition to the psychological kind of containment of that. And I'm wondering if we would consider removing that, because it is DHHS recommendation to take those down.
All of the dividers on student desks and tables, those are all down. What we didn't recommend or didn't necessarily make a decision on is the dividers in front of the offices. So, but as far as students go, we've had that discussion.
Okay. Can you tell me also, Kathy, what it looks like on the bus?
That's really important. Thank you, Wendy. And that is in the plan. Yes, this is very important because there is a federal order that requires all public transportation, all people on public transportation to wear masks. So that's not a choice for us. That's something that we have to do. The drivers will be required to wear masks, and that is in this plan, so thank you for pointing that out. Yes, and students will be expected to come to the bus wearing a mask. There will be assigned seats because we know we may need to do some contact tracing. So in order to do the contact tracing, we'll have assigned seats to make it easier. The bus drivers will do the best they can to space the kids out as much as they can. You know, some bus runs, kids will be closer than other bus runs just because of the nature of the beast. Some buses are more crowded. We will also be asking as many parents as are able to transport their children so that there will be more room on the bus for everybody. But we understand certainly not everybody can do that. So thank you for asking that question, Wendy.
Okay, other discussion? One of the key issues here, obviously, is the masking in the schools. The recommendation has been, if we're in low to moderate, that masks should certainly be optional. Anything from substantial or above, masks would be required, and that's basically what this plan says. As well as the requirement for masks on the buses, which we have no choice in anyway. That's a federal requirement. Any discussion on that part of the program right at this point? We take the numbers from DHHS when they come out. They in fact, last Monday we had not a board meeting, but at a meeting, all of the counties, Stratford County, Carroll County, and I think one other county were in the moderate level. On Tuesday, DHHS came out with their new numbers, and we went from moderate to substantial in one day. Every Monday they come out with their report, and as of today we're still in the substantial area. If that changes, then we could certainly go back to the moderate. If we go back to moderate, then according to the plan, masks then would be optional. These are all local Carroll. These are local Carroll. No, we're talking about local numbers. All right.
You know, that would be a
Yeah.
question for the hospital.
Yeah. No. Yeah, hang on. She's got some. Yeah, I did read that.
Well, maybe I don't. I thought I did, but there is an order from the CDC. It's written out, and you know, maybe it would be good to post it on the website so everybody can see it. I saw it on the CDC website, and I also received something from one of the transportation companies that deals with other school districts saying that mask mandate is for their buses.
We'll post it on the website tomorrow morning. Okay. Yes. There's no easy answer to the mask problem right now. And well, your common sense. And then I read the report from the American Academy of Pediatricians that said all children under 12 should wear a mask. That's what they said. I mean, I read through it. Well, that's right, because they're not eligible for vaccines. If they're eligible, but the general public from 12 and over are eligible for vaccines, and as you see with the numbers, only half of the people are taking advantage of that. So, okay, we're going to go through our meeting. We'll have public input at the end of the meeting. We have to get through this. We have a ton of non-public after this. Yeah, we'll have 5 more minutes of 15 minutes of public input at the end. Yep.
When the task force met and wrote the stay open plan, my wonder is, did they talk about all schools in the district would be treated the same, or did they talk about the difference between the elementary schools and then the middle school and the high school being treated differently because of the vaccine? And maybe it doesn't matter if we're at substantial, we need to all deal with the same thing.
We didn't talk about treating schools differently. It's not necessarily recommended by DHHS, so we're trying as close as we can to follow the DHHS recommendations. So.
Okay, any other comments on the plan as it's presented? And we've had a couple of modifications that Stephanie requested, and I think we've marked those up. Okay, at this point, if there's no other comments on the board, I'd look for a motion to approve the stay open plan as approved, as recommended, and as amended with Stephanie's changes. Do I hear a motion? Okay, it's been moved by Jim Pittman. Do I have a second? Second by Wendy. Okay, any additional comments before we take a vote? Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor of approving the stay open plan as presented. Krista? Wendy? Stephanie? Dr. Jim? Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Dana? And chair votes aye as well. Okay, the plan is approved as presented with the modifications as recorded. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is use of facilities.
Yes, okay. The gentleman that spoke earlier, I think, did hit the nail on the head as far as our use of facilities. We, as someone mentioned earlier, that when COVID first came upon us, we were using an abundance of caution, and we've learned some things since. One of the reasons, as you'll recall, because you were quite involved in the decision-making, or you made the decision, you weren't just involved, there was some thought that COVID could be transmitted through surfaces. And of course, if we had people coming in from the outside, there's always a possibility that that there could be something on a surface that would infect our students and staff. We've since learned that that's really not the case, that that's something that we don't have to worry about. And I have heard from several of our communities how important it is to the various entities in the community to be using our facility. So I think we're in a different place, and I think this is a good time to talk about having, whether it be Parks and Recreation or the facilities that, or the organizations that are used to using our facilities, it's, I think, a good time to be talking about whether or not we can allow that to start happening again.
Okay, I'm personally in favor of opening the facilities to any organization that would like to use it, with the stipulation that they follow whatever protocol we have in place at that particular point in time. If masks are required inside, then people using the facility would have to wear masks inside. If not, they would have the ability to make their decision whether they wanted to wear masks or not. But other than that, I think it's time to open up the facilities back to the groups that want to do it, both indoor and outdoor facilities. Anyone else have some input on that?
Just a quick question for myself. In the past practice, have we had agreements that basically would last throughout, the school year or season or something like that? Has that been more common than a single event type of use?
Yeah, sometimes we have both, really.
Yeah.
Did you hear me? Okay. So we have, as far as whether we have seasons or things that continue throughout the year, we have some of both. We have outside organizations that have meetings once a month sometimes. We have, I think basketball was mentioned, that's a season. Sometimes we have activities outside where organizations use the bathroom. I think someone mentioned a senior dinner earlier. So we have all kinds of things happening.
And it's certainly not just for the facilities at Kingswood, it's for all of the, all of the buildings within the district, so. Okay. Yes. Yeah, pass the.
I'll just say that thank you so much for speaking tonight, Mark. I think that for all of our small towns, that these buildings are the places where we gather, and they're really important to foster that sense of community, so I'm in favor too.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then I would entertain a motion then to approve the use of our facilities by the outside groups as long as they follow the protocol that's in place when they're using the facility. Okay, so we moved by Krista, seconded by Stephanie. Okay, any other discussion on use of facilities? Okay, all those in favor, Krista? Wendy? Yes. Stephanie? Yes. Dr. Jim? Yes. Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Dana? Yes. And chair votes aye as well. Excellent. Thank you.
I think that's really exciting that we're going to start to have organizations back in our facilities. And I know the Arts Center will be very pleased about that too. So that's great. Thank you very much. All right, Youth Behavior Risk Survey. This is the time of year where the board needs to decide whether or not we administer the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. It's administered every 2 years, and the district has the opportunity either to do it or to opt out. One of the things, there was a letter in the newspaper, and one of the things that I was a little disappointed about was that the letter did talk about some concerns, which, that's why we have the programs that we have and do the things we do, but it didn't talk about the improvements in the Youth Behavior Risk Survey. And I thought, before we have a discussion or you have a discussion about whether we should do it or not, I thought we could talk a little bit about the things that improved since the last survey that was done. The percent of students who tried marijuana for the first time decreased by 4.8%. The percent of students who used heroin decreased by 1.2%, and it is very low, lower than the New Hampshire average. The percent of students who used methamphetamines decreased by 2%. The percent of students who have ever used ecstasy decreased by 6.7%. Again, that statistic was lower than the average in New Hampshire. The percent of students who ever used a prescription drug without a prescription decreased by 13.5%. Again, lower than the New Hampshire average. The percent of students offered or given drugs on school property decreased by 6%. The percent of students who think it's easy to get marijuana decreased by 12%. The percent of students who think it would be easy to get a prescription drug decreased by 7.8%. And the percent of students who had their first drink before the age of 13 decreased by 4.6%. That's just a snapshot, and I'm not saying that our communities and our schools don't have a lot of work to do. We do, but I think it's important to recognize when things are getting better. That's one of the reasons that in the past we've done the survey, is so we have a sense of where our kids are at. That being said, I think because we have paid such personal attention to our kids, I do think we have a good sense of where our kids are at. And I do think that there is a lot offered to them to help them in this particular area. I also want to mention that we have a grant, and I think you all know this, but probably parents don't realize that we have a grant, and we're able to hire a wellness coordinator, and the wellness coordinator is going to be able to help our most vulnerable students. One of the things that we know from research is that children who have adverse childhood experiences, otherwise known as trauma, are multiple more times vulnerable to drugs, alcohol, risky sexual behavior, suicide, and to being victims of abuse. And so we do have systems of support in place in our schools to deal with those kinds of things, and we now will have a wellness coordinator for a period of time under this grant to help us continue with our implementation of our practices in our schools to help these students, and as well as direct work with families and students. I also want to give a shout out to Carroll County Public Health. They put together a really great brochure, and you'll be able to see this on our website. It talks about how many of our kids don't use alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. 67.9% didn't use alcohol, 80% didn't binge drink, 96.9% did not drink and drive, 91.6% don't smoke cigarettes, 67% don't smoke marijuana, almost 96% do not use prescription drugs. So I think it's nice to see it from that frame too. Again, not saying that we don't have some work to do. And there are some tips for parents on this that are just really nicely done. So kudos to Carroll County Coalition for Public Health. And with that, you've got a decision to make about the survey.
My biggest concern with the survey is time. Obviously, this is time out of the classroom for the students that have to fill this out. However, I think it is a very important survey. I think the information is very important. We did opt out a couple of years ago. I think it's very beneficial to have this information done. So I am in support of doing the survey again this time. But I want to make sure that it really doesn't adversely affect the time in the classroom for the students taking it. It's only about a 45-minute survey from what I gather. No, it's completely anonymous. So again, 45 minutes is 45 minutes, but I think the benefits of doing the survey outweigh not doing it. So I'm in favor of doing it. Any other comments?
I want you to lose your good name there. Okay, where do I begin? You may recall that last year when we had this come before us, I was not a fan. I think in principle it's a great idea However, I question the impartiality of the people conducting this. And at the time, I pointed out this sheet they attached. It's called the 13 Deadly Facts About Marijuana. And, you know, they go down the line, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff in here that's been pretty well refuted over time. You know, like you can eat a marijuana cookie, you're going to jump off a balcony. They present that as proof. You know, marijuana causes heart attacks, things of that nature. But what really concerns me is they close it out on their last talking point where they say the platform of the national and state Democratic parties include legalization and commercialization of marijuana. Why does one political party want to harm our children and grandchildren, damage the environment, and create another big tobacco industry? Now, by no means are we looking at this as an unbiased statement. So it really makes me question the motivations and, you know, their ability to conduct a survey that has meaningful information. So I'm not in favor of this.
Any other comments? Okay.
I've actually been a teacher and administered this survey, and I've seen all the questions on it, every single one, and I know it's changing, you know, changes from year to year depending on the street names for drugs and things like that, but it's incredibly valuable, and I think the piece that's most valuable is actually the piece about mental health. It doesn't screen, but it gathers information about students' mental health. And I think that if we are going to have a wellness coordinator in our district, that person needs data from which to make decisions that are grounded in what's actually happening in our district. And it's much more difficult to drive with your eyes closed if you're not quite sure. You can do general things, but you can do much more targeted things if you know what the actual numbers are. So I'm in favor of it. You know, I think that youth behavioral and mental health is not a political issue. I think this is data that we can use as our district, and that we can have initiatives that are more targeted from it. Particularly because of the COVID pandemic, I'm very curious about how this has affected our students' mental, emotional, and behavioral health. So I think that this data would be really valuable for us to make decisions moving forward.
I had a problem with when I read the letter that was sent to us, because I felt that it was biased. I felt that it wasn't neutral. It was professing to be for the benefit of the kids, but it also was blatantly putting down liberal values. I'm just saying that's how I read it, and I had a very hard time with that. That being said, I do agree with Stephanie that the value of the information we get and we can use without their interpretation of it could be very beneficial for the district, and therefore we should very seriously consider doing this. I don't think the 45 minutes of time is an issue. I think 45 minutes of time was an issue when we didn't have all of our kids all of the time. And I think now that we're going to have all of our kids all of the time, knock on wood, that 45 minutes is well worth the results of the survey. One thing, and it's probably because of just having been in the district for so long, I feel like I'm fairly well aware of what we do in a district around the drugs and alcohol and the programs that we put in place. I'm not sure the community knows all that we do, because even from the letter, it sort of sounded like we sat on our thumbs and twiddled them, and it perturbed me, the assumption that we don't do anything with the data that came in. So part of what I would like us to do, not tonight, but at some point, is in fact to spell out for the community what we're doing to support these kids in need. And the other thing is, I would like to learn and hear what they do with the results besides simply reporting it out in services to support the kids.
We know who it is.
But again, just I kind of echoing Krista and Stephanie's feedback. I wasn't impressed with the letter attached to it because I'm still uncertain the global, like what their intentions are with the material. But again, knowing the crisis, we've all felt mental health over the 18-month of kind of myself and everyone else with the pandemic. I would like to see kind of the baseline of where the kids are at, mental health, and see what we can do and maybe refine, and if we have this life coach or well-being coach, what we can do with the data. And again, just that soft baseline coming off the pandemic. How do they feel now? Life has changed for them, whether it's good, bad, and different, in school, remote learning. They're not going to, they don't really administer it. They just want the data.
Well, this is,
that's my,
I'm not sure. I don't have the letter in front of me, but the letter, I believe, came from a community group.
Correct.
So they, as far as I know, they've done nothing with
No,
the data.
they just want us to educate us.
Us to do.
They want us
Right,
to do it,
right.
right, because they, correct.
So that letter, I just want to clarify.
Yeah,
'cause
that's just-
that letter really wasn't from the
Administration,
agency
correct.
who is administering.
That's where it gets correct.
The survey.
Correct.
That is, the survey is administered by the CDC.
Correct.
So.
It gets confusing.
Yeah, it does get a little
confusing. So that's
confusing.
why I agree, and I feel like Jack said, I support us doing it. It's a good baseline. We're coming off the pandemic. We got the kids in front of us, and let's see where the kids are at.
Yeah, I mean, we have to evaluate the information when it
Yeah.
comes back in. Unfortunately, it takes 2 years to get all of this stuff processed and
Well, yeah.
the information
Yeah.
back.
And
However,
then those kids are gone. And,
sure, but it's valuable information for us to
Yeah.
look at.
But again, just because those kids are gone, we're still always doing things. We never stop.
Absolutely,
You know?
absolutely, and again, the letter we received is very biased on their particular approach. However, they don't have a program to work toward an end. We at least have things in place to work toward an end. So I think it's important that we do the survey and get it done. So. Yep. So I guess I would entertain a motion that we approve and authorize the issuing of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey to our students this year. Okay, moved by Stephanie. Seconded by Dana.
Something that parents got, like the letter that you're speaking of, did parents get a copy?
No, this was a letter directed to the school board urging us to approve this particular survey. Regardless of their desires for us to approve it, which was very slanted in one direction or not, we're discussing whether it makes sense for us to get that data. But yeah, it's not a letter that went to the general public, although there was a letter in the letter to the editor in the Granite State by the same group that was urging this process. Again, Team Wolfboro. Team Wolfboro. And again, they're nice enough people. They are very into anti-drugs and all of that, which is good. but they don't have any program to help the process. They didn't talk to the state legislatures when the votes came up about marijuana and all that. They expected us to do those things. So again, it's a very slanted process, but the information coming out of the survey is still very important for us to know. Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
I just want to respond to what you said, Krista. I think there is a lot that we do, as you know, because you've been in the schools, and Stephanie, you know the same. There's a lot that we do in this area. However, I think you're also right that parents don't necessarily know that, and so and we have brochures and things, but they're not quite the same as having somebody come and do a presentation about what's happening. So I'm thinking that maybe after our wellness coordinator gets her feet wet, she can come and talk about the different programs we have in the different schools, and then what our vision is as a district for furthering each of these programs under, yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I had Stephanie moved the motion. Was there a second? Dana, sorry, Dana. Okay, any other discussion on the youth risk survey? Okay, so all those in favor, Krista? Yes. Wendy? Yes. Stephanie? Yes. Dr. Jim? Yes. Jim Pittman? No. Dana? Yes. And chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on.
Okay, sharing the microphone. Under G, authorization to suspend. This is the time of year before the school year begins that the board typically provides this authorization, so I'll just read it so that those in the public can hear it. We, the Governor Wentworth Regional School Board, recognize Kathleen Cuddy-Egbert, Superintendent of Schools, and Heather R. Cummings, Assistant Superintendent, as our representatives, and authorize them to suspend students from school for up to 10 days in accordance with RSA 193:13-IB. The superintendent may designate this authority to the school principals and assistant principals. Furthermore, the superintendent and assistant are authorized, following a hearing, to conduct the suspension of a pupil for a period in excess of 10 school days, up to a total of 20 days. A very rare occasion and something we try very hard not to do, but very occasionally we need to do it.
Okay, so we need a motion and a second to approve, to vote on that. Okay, it's been moved by Jim Pittman. By Wendy. Wendy, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of approving the authorization to suspend. Krista? Yes. Wendy? Yes. Stephanie? Yes. Dr. Jim? Yes. Jim Pittman? Yes. Dana? Yes. And chair votes aye as well. Okay, and I do have the forms that I'm going to pass around for everyone to sign, so we have the master on file.
Thank you. And then the last one, we, the Governor Wentworth Regional School Board, authorize Superintendent Kathleen Cuddy-Egbert, Assistant Superintendent Heather R. Cummings, Business Administrator Kathy O'Blenis, and Director of Curriculum Caitlin Hills to sign the assurances for all grants and requests to and from trust funds.
Okay, and again, I'd look for a motion to approve the authorization to sign assurances for grants. Moved by Dr. Jim. Second by Krista. By Dana. Okay. Okay, all those in favor of approving the authorization to sign assurances. Krista. Yes. Wendy. Yes. Stephanie. Dr. Jim. Yes. Jim Pittman. Yes. Dana. And chair votes aye as well. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to Chairman's report. I have a couple of notices that were sent out since our last school board meeting. Expressions of sympathy were sent to Chuck DeSica on the passing of his father, to Jill Daly Gibson on the passing of her father, and to Lynn Peterson on the passing of her mother-in-law. Get well wishes was sent to Amy Hahn, and congratulations wishes were sent to Jacqueline Benson on the birth of her son. The one thing that we didn't get on the back of the agenda today, which was kind of my fault for not follow up, was the committee assignments for this year. And let me check. They're not a whole lot different than last year. Academic Affairs going to be Krista Abear, Tim Eldridge, Stephanie King, and Charlene Seibel. Human Resources, Krista Abear, Wendy Fenderson, Dana Streeter, and myself. Building and Maintenance, Tim Eldridge, Dr. Manning, Jim Pittman, and Dana Streeter. And Finance, Dr. Manning, Jim Pittman, Stephanie King, and myself. And Charlene is going to continue as the community rep for Community TV. Remembering that additional board members can attend these committee meetings. They don't have a vote within that committee. Any votes that come out of the committee are directed to the full board at a full board meeting. So even if you're sitting in on the meeting, you do not have a vote if you're not officially on the committee itself. And that's the way our guidelines are written for our committee structure. And that's all I have under that. Committee reports. Any committee reports? Academic Affairs? Nothing at this point. Building and Maintenance. Do we have anything under Building and Maintenance? Well, that's for the Building and Maintenance Committee now to meet and assign a chair for this coming year. And as soon as you do, get that information to Linda so she can update the back of the agenda for next time. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And I have nothing for Finance or Human Resources now, although we do have negotiations this year for the support staff, and we'll be meeting, getting notice to the support staff to set up meetings for those negotiations as we move forward. Advanced planning, first day of school is September 7th, the day after Labor Day. On September 13th is our next board meeting, and prior to our next board meeting at 4 o'clock is a reception for our new staff members, new teaching staff at 4 o'clock, and then our board meeting is at 7 o'clock at the Lakes Region Technology Center for that meeting. September 14th is the Kingswood Regional Middle School Open House. The 16th is the High School Open House. And on the 23rd is Carpenter School and Effingham Elementary School open houses. Krista.
Is there a day that the ninth graders will come to school independently of everybody else and for the new kids throughout the district?
Yeah.
And do we know what that is?
We do, but I have to look it up.
Okay.
In my memory bank right now.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the parents know that there's that day for the kids.
Step up day, I think they call it.
Yeah.
They come and visit.
Yeah.
It's not called Step Up Day. But,
Okay.
Freshman day or
the letters will be going out tomorrow. So.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah, Jumpstart.
Jumpstart, thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Somebody would know that. Okay. All right. We're going to have 15 minutes of public input. So if somebody would like, again, keep your comments to to a minimum, so everyone that wants to talk over the next 15 minutes can do that. And please go. I guess we have to put that microphone back up. Thank you, Stephanie. And please state your name and the town when you get ready.
Juanita Hill, KRHSPE. Interesting that the room is full of no masks with 2 exceptions, but we're going to tell our kids, you have to wear a mask when you come to school. What's the message there? We're perfectly comfortable being here, but we're going to make our kids put the mask on because the DHSS says we have a substantial risk. Okay, we are in an information war. This is going to sound absolutely crazy to many people because obviously a lot of people haven't heard this. You're not getting all the information that you need. Your information is being censored, and you need to hear all the information to make the best decision for our children, for ourselves. Okay. First of all, I'm going to go a little backwards here. Masks are asphyxiating, essentially. If you watch the Conway School Board meeting, one of the meteorologists did a test with a mask on a student that was standing. The carbon dioxide levels jumped 5 times within a minute and 15 seconds. One person in the audience asked, "What's going on here?" And the doctor in the audience said, "He's being asphyxiated." So we're doing this to our kids. They're going to play sports in the gym with a mask on when you need extra oxygen. Masks are ineffective and unhealthy. If you go to, and you might want to take notes because I have things for you to look up. LifeSiteNews.com has collected 32 studies of negative health effects associated with mask wearing. They have also collected 47 studies of the ineffectiveness of mask wearing. Okay, I would like to see, this plan that you voted on before public input. I wish you had waited. Not that maybe you would have changed your mind, but it would have been nice to hear from people that are against mask wearing, with good reason. If you don't change your mind and you're forcing this mask based on DHSS, substantial, whatever they're calling it, I would like you to post those studies that you have so that everyone can see those, so that we have the chance to study those studies. The only thing that makes sense to me is to keep your kids home when they have symptoms. That's the only time that a virus is contagious. And it's interesting to me, too, that this coincides, DHSS and rise in cases coincides with the start of school, as well as the CDC publicly came out and said the PCR testing does not work. It is not accurate. So the cases went up based on what? On what test? The FDA did not approve the PCR test. Okay? It's just pie in the sky. They're making this up. And I'd like you to please research Operation Lockstep. Operation Lockstep. Check it out. Read that and see if that looks familiar to what's happening in our country and around the globe. Okay? You will be shocked at what is happening in this world. Okay? So check that out. And please do not use Google, do not use Facebook, do not use Instagram or YouTube. You will find it on DuckDuckGo. Use Telegram, BitChute, Rumble, and CloudHub, right? Some of those. Those are the groups that are not censoring information, okay? Check out the real information. Exactly. There is, okay. I don't want to lose my place. All right. The CDC is constantly flip-flopping. Every time Dr. Fauci comes to the microphone, there's something new, okay? If you haven't noticed that, at least, that's obvious. What's coming out from the mainstream media is obvious. You hear it all the time. So first, no masks were necessary. Then masks were necessary. Then lockdowns were necessary. Now they're not, okay? Now we have to distance 6 feet, now 3 feet. Now, if you get a vaccine, okay, all of a sudden you're not spreading, you won't be a spreader. Oh, wait, now you will be a spreader. Oh, we figured that out, okay? You got to get boosters now, so good luck with that. Do you know what's in the vaccines? Do you know every ingredient in the vaccine? Okay, after you research Operation Lockstep and check out some of these sites, you'll be shocked, and I'm afraid for you. I am, and it's going to cause a lot of pain. Okay, so the big thing is Delta variant now. Okay, if we can't identify the COVID virus with a PCR test, how can we identify the Delta variant? Okay, I don't see how this is even possible. So this is made up. So there was a person in Alberta, Canada, that was sued for not wearing a mask, charged $1,200. The prosecution could not prove that COVID existed. There is no isolated sample of COVID-19 virus. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. This whole thing is a sham. It's a scandemic, a pandemic that doesn't exist. It's a manipulation of statistics to force us into compliance and fear. Okay, what's really interesting now, the CDC does not require their employees to get a vaccine. What do they know that we are not being told? Pfizer CEO has not even taken his own vaccine. He can't travel. What does he know? Why does he not take the vaccine? Okay, something's going on here that you need to be aware of. It's important to the survival, not only of this country, but the entire world. Okay, there's this evil going on, and it's beyond scary. But it's our responsibility, talk about responsibility, to find out what the heck is going on. I have to censor myself. Please also research VAERS, V-A-E-R-S. Okay, that's the vaccine adverse something. What is it? It's the adverse effects that are resulting from the vaccine. A CDC whistleblower said that over 45,000 people in the United States have died. That's probably an underestimate, because there is acute reaction, which happens within three-ish days. Some doctors don't even report it. Okay, and then there are longer-term reactions. The biggest problem is blood clotting. And ironically enough, Pfizer made $19 billion in one quarter. One quarter, $19 billion. Okay, and they made $13 billion on anti-blood clotting medication. So tell me what racket here is happening. Okay. They are not looking out for our best interests. They are not looking out for our health. They don't care about us. They care about their money, their power, their control. Children, the younger you are, the younger a person is, 30 and under especially, are very much at risk when it comes to getting the vaccine. They're suffering from myocarditis, especially in young males. Okay, it's inflammation of the heart. The heart will never recover. It's extremely dangerous to our children. Please research spike proteins. Look that up. Please research graphene oxide. Okay, how did this happen that our agencies, including DHS, okay, the American Academy for Pediatrics, the AMA, the CDC, the FDA. How did this happen? That they are now untrustworthy. We should be able to trust them. I used to trust them. But now I see what's going on. They are not trustworthy. They're in fact nefarious. And that we have been infiltrated. It includes bribes, extortion, blackmail, and indoctrination, not education. Our media, from the Granite State News and above, is involved in this scripted programming. If you change channels on TV, the same exact words. Every CBS, NBC, whatever. I stopped my TV entirely. Don't watch TV. Now the NEA is suggesting mandated vaccines or tests weekly. If the test doesn't test anything, why are we mandating testing? If you look at some of those tests, those nasal tests, and it says EO on it, it contains ethylene oxide, which is highly cancerous. Not a good idea to stick a swab in your nose, really. Okay, so, and how do we turn this around? You've got to wake up. You've got to get involved. You've got to take a side. There are two sides. You've got to take the side. We have to save our country. We have to save our country, essentially. I know I sound like a lunatic, but trust me, please research this stuff so that you can wake up and see this. Get involved. Do not comply. Do not comply. I am not getting the vaccine. I will never get the vaccine. And in Australia, they're forcing people to the ground and stabbing that thing in people's arms. They're flying helicopters over to make sure they're locked in their houses. That's coming to us if we don't fight this. Students, where are you? Students, you have a voice. This is your school, this is your district. Let's hear from you. Get involved. It's your future. So kids that are watching this, if you're here, get involved. Where's a student on the board here? We didn't have one last year. We need a student here, and we need a lot of students to come in, no matter what grade they're in. Lastly, we start off this, this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we mean what we say? If you mean what you say, live up to it. We're a constitutional republic. Okay? We're one nation under God with liberty and justice for all. Liberty means not being forced to wear a mask by any agency, by any board, by anyone at all. It's my body, my choice. Thank you very much.
Okay, we only have 2 minutes and 45 seconds left, so go ahead.
I'm going to ask kindly that you extend the public input, because a lot of people here had a long day at work and they came and they drove all this way because it's important to them to feel heard. And we had a lot of silencing from this board last year, and I'm going to ask that we don't do that this year. You made a commitment to be on this board to serve us, and I'm going to ask you to extend the public input, please. Will one of you motion to extend public input? Does anyone care what the public has to say?
It's up to the board to vote.
Dana, will you motion to allow me to speak a little longer, please? Would you motion to allow me to speak a little bit longer, please? Would you make a motion so that some of us can speak? No, we need to do the motion. I have 2 minutes. Now it's a 1. So, you wear a 2A hat. You're a 2A guy. You're a Constitution guy, right? Let us speak. You're our representatives. I can't do it in 1 minute. Please, Stephanie will make a motion. Krista, will you make a motion?
You guys work for us.
It's important to us to feel heard.
We have about 45 minutes of non-public after this.
I know it's a long day and I know everyone's tired, but we all feel like it's important to be here. Then please give me an opportunity.
Well, she's not speaking.
Yes, I have to say what I have to say.
We're not an audience. We're the voice.
How many other people will speak?
Raise your hand if you'd like to speak.
I'll speak, No, okay, I've spoken before. We're going to get people, if we've got another 45 minutes after this.
Then you need to do this before and after that.
We did before. We weren't here.
All right. Well, you didn't last 5 times I came. There was nothing in the
You told all of us when they were trying to talk in the beginning.
You're going to lose your positions next time there's a vote, so you might as well listen to us, and maybe people will get you back in there.
I don't mind if we go another 10 minutes, 2 minutes per speaker.
I'll keep it short.
All right, I'll take my 2 minutes.
And if they do it in 2 minutes, fine. If you can't, use up whatever time is left. So if the board, right now, we're down to 0. So we'll take a vote. Is there a motion to extend the 10 minutes? Do we have a second?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The bottom button. Right at the bottom, the red one. It says stop.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we got a vote. Is it all those in favor? I won't even take a roll call vote. All those in favor of extending for 10 minutes. So I'll say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, 10 minutes.
Okay, I'm not going to take 10 minutes. I'm here tonight. My name is Jessica Williams from Wolfboro. I'm here tonight because I love my children. I gave birth to my children. My children's bones came from my bones. Every single decision from the moment they were born has been to the benefit of their safety. And I'm going to ask that you trust us as parents to make medical decisions for our children. I decided when I vaccinate my children. I decide when I don't vaccinate my children. We've learned a lot since last August. We've debated what happens next. We still have a pandemic happening. I'm not going to call it a scamdemic. I do think there's a pandemic happening. I do think the Delta variant is more transmissible. That's what the data looks like. But we also are seeing that it's not affecting children more. So if you actually look at the CDC data, we are not seeing that children are dying in higher numbers. And adults aren't either. So it is affecting more people. It is affecting unvaccinated people and vaccinated people. We're actually seeing that the transmissibility of the virus is the same between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, despite what you're seeing on the news. And we already went over the PCR test being unreliable. This is irrefutable. So we had an issue last year where the PCR test was up to 97% ineffective. It was giving us false positive up to 97% of the time. At 35 cycles, the test was 3% accurate. At 30 cycles, it was 20% accurate. And so the World Health Organization and the CDC have both gone ahead very quietly, and they've reduced the cycles so that we're getting maybe more accurate testing. So what we were seeing, that test was used to tell us what cases, deaths. So we need to consider that there have been errors, and we need to consider also that there are still errors in some of the things that we believe. The PCR test was invented by Kary Mullis, who won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1993. And this is what he had to say about Dr. Anthony Fauci, the godhead that we seem to all worship. The man thinks you can take a blood sample and stick an electron microscope, and it's got a virus in there. You'll know it. He doesn't understand medicine. He should not be in the position he's in. Most of those guys up there on the top are just total administrative people, and they don't know anything about the body. This is the man that won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. Probably not a credible person, right? What else have we learned? We've learned, like Anita said, that things have been silenced. I'm not going to belabor that point, but I'm going to ask that you do not silence us. I'm going to ask that you listen to us. We're here because we care about our children, not because we want to be right, not because of a political decision, not because we want to embarrass you. We're here because we love our kids. What else is being silenced? You only need to look to Dr. Robert Malone. I'm going to ask that you look to Dr. Robert Malone. I will go over this here in a moment, but what is being silenced is the vaccine efficacy, durability, and safety. I see in your reopening plan that you're making two separate plans for vaccinated and unvaccinated. And if there's a transmissibility that is equal on both sides, it doesn't make any sense at all. We all can be in danger, or we all may not be in danger. The vaccine is not making it so that people don't get COVID. So not making someone quarantine makes no sense at all to me. I mean, if you and I can both spread it to 5 people if we get COVID, but you don't have to quarantine, but I do. That seems like you're discriminating against me because I didn't comply with a medical directive. So I would ask that you rethink that. Dr. Malone is pumping the brakes on the vaccine program for children, by the way. This man, he has a 17-page CV. This man is the inventor of the mRNA vaccine. He's pumping the brakes on the program. He's saying it's not working. He's saying that it's dangerous for children. He does not recommend this vaccine for children. The inventor of the mRNA vaccine says children should not be receiving this. I think we need to listen to these people. We have medical professionals that you have consulted with that have maybe a 2-page CV, okay? Maybe they're doctors. I mean, they've worked hard. But this man here is something else. And I think you should read and look at some of the things that he talks about. Even our own Dr. Chan in the state of New Hampshire says that mask wearing, really, you need to consider all of the negative consequences from masks versus the positive consequences of masks. I'm not going to say masks don't work. I believe that there is a small chance that a mask does work, especially a properly fitted mask. But if you go into the schools, you're going to see the kids are not wearing the mask properly. They're touching them a lot, especially the younger ones, and therefore they may have higher viral loads on their hands, and we're actually creating more of a problem than we're helping. So I'm going to ask you, please, when you're making these decisions, let us as parents make as many of them as possible. I know that we're in the substantial level right now, but we're all here. You're all eating in restaurants. You're all sitting next to each other. You're all 3 feet apart. One of you's wearing a mask. We need to have some more common sense. And I'm going to just walk away now and say thank you and welcome back to the 2021-22 school year.
Here, 5 minutes left.
Hi, I'm Angela, and I have 2 kids starting in New Durham. And I was not going to speak tonight, but I did just want to ask what may seem like a kind of silly question. But you're talking about keeping our children safe. And it's going to be silly, but what are you trying to keep them safe from? COVID, right? How many children in the state of New Hampshire has died of COVID?
None, I hope, and I hope it stays that way.
0 from the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. 0 under the age of 19. I think there's 1 or 2 under the age of 30, and in my age bracket, I think there's 7. So total, it's like, or 12, I'm sorry. So that, I just wanted to come up and put my vote against for masks as a parent, and that's why, because our kids are safe, and I do think that masks are doing a lot more harm than they are good, and that's all.
Hi, everyone. My name's Heather Haskell. I'm from Ossipee, and I pulled some information through DHS off of the website today that was last updated on the 13th of this month. New Hampshire's total cases is 102,901. Recovered fully without being hospitalized, 99,905. Out of our whole state, we've only had 1,395 people that have died. My child suffered immensely last year being remote school the whole time, and I'm gonna try not to be emotional, but she stayed home because she can't wear a mask, and she's gonna suffer again this year because there's no remote option for her to even learn anything. What happens to these kids that have no option? Does any of our opinions make any weight on your choices tonight that we're trying to say? I mean, am I the only person that feels this emotional? I have been in the trenches home, had to be out of work because of this, and it's horrible. Just please, I beg you of the school board to do a survey of parents and students who are old enough to weigh a decision and ask them what they want to do this year for school. Do they want to wear a mask? Do they not want to wear a mask? It should be up to them. We are all sitting here fine. I've been to amusement parks, no questions asked, fully packed. No substantial amount of transmission has ever been reported of these since everything's been open. Please ask a survey of the district. Ask people what they want to do.
Hi, Bobby Budman, Wolfboro. I have a child at Kingswood Regional High School, and he is vaccinated. And I am also vaccinated, which is why I'm standing here without my mask on, because I actually have a 96% chance of not ending up with COVID because I'm vaccinated, even the Delta virus. However, I am going to throw some other data out there because I am glad you're being flexible with this mask policy. I would love to send my child to Kingswood and say, my child is vaccinated, he should never have to wear a mask. But the thing is, my child's going to come in contact with another child who could bring Delta virus home because he's probably going to be asymptomatic. So I'm just going to say some numbers. From July 22nd to July 29th, 72,000 pediatric cases, COVID cases happened. Delta variant is very different than what we faced last year. Last year I stood up here and I said our children need to wear masks for our teachers. This year I'm standing here saying that there are cases that we now do not know about, that I will put my child in a mask to protect children who are unvaccinated. However, I'm going to do a caveat to this. After vaccinations come out for children, which is supposed to be mid-September to the end of September, parents do have the decision to vaccinate their children. And I think after that, 8 weeks after the vaccinations come out, I think it should be mask optional. Because if I've done my job doing what I feel as a parent I need to do to keep other children safe, then I think there should be the right 8 weeks after everybody has a chance to be vaccinated that I can send my child to school without a mask, depending on the numbers. So I will say there is that caveat in this. But I do want to talk about numbers, because we're good at talking about numbers in this room. So I just sat over there and ran some numbers, and they might not be right, but I didn't go to Kingswood, so I didn't get my math at Kingswood. I went to another school, and in statistics, I learned from a really great teacher, Mr. Gagnon. And then I went to college, and I had statistics, and I learned from another great professor. And then I had my master's program and learned from another great professor. So I'm not going to say my math is correct, and someone might correct me on my math. But here's a little bit of numbers. Our cumulative pediatric cases are 4,413,547, or 14.4% of all COVID cases. That carries a rate of 5,864 cases per 100,000 children, or 0.05864, which is almost 6%. So if we have 2,112 students in GWRSD, based on our last numbers, 124 students will catch COVID. But Delta variant's a little higher, it's 18%, but I'm still going to do this at 14%, because we'll take the numbers from the whole pandemic.
Okay,
So given
Bobby?
let me finish, please.
I will. Just take another minute, okay, because we're well past the 10 minutes.
Okay. So given that 1.9% of those cases end up with a child in the hospital, that means 124 times 0.019 equals 2.35 children in GWRSD will have a tube jammed down their throat. So, should we disrupt the lives of 2,100 children and ask them to wear a mask at school for those 2.5 children? Yes, we should. It's a tiny little mask. When the numbers go up, our children should be required to wear masks. But as you stated, when the numbers are down, our children don't have to wear masks. So thank you for being fluid in your policy of numbers go up, children wear masks, numbers go down, children don't wear masks. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Okay, I will now ask for a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A, semicolon 3, paragraph 2, for personnel and legal matters. Okay, moved by Wendy, seconded by Stephanie. Okay, all those in favor, Krista? Wendy? Stephanie? Dr. Jim? Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Dana? Chair votes aye. We're now in non-public. We're going to go to another classroom. If you'd like to stay, we're going to be about 45 minutes probably in non-public. So if you want to stay to see us adjourn our meeting, you can certainly do that. Thank you.